Today in this tutorial I'm going to be talking about ways to improve your guitar tone when you have no other choice but to record DI. In today's world, everybody has these home studios, and it makes it difficult to record guitar amps and get the tone that you really want. And there's nothing really quite like plugging in and getting a tube amp to react to your playing dynamics, but it's just not practical. So nowadays, a lot of people are using amp sims, and I'm going to talk about some ways that I've found to improve the quality of the sound of these amp sims. Now, I'm going to be using Logic, and Logic comes with some built-in amp simulators. And they're pretty good, actually. They cover all the bases, the tweeds, and some of the British AC30s and Marshall style amps. But they still don't really react and sound like a real amp. So I've found a way to kind of help me get a sound that reminds me a lot more of an actual mic cabinet. And I've been using this effect from Effectrode, Effectrode.com, and it's called the Tube Driver. What it is, it's a pedal with 3 tubes in it. One of them is interchangeable, so if you want to mess around with different tubes for different gain staging, you can do that. But right now I'm just using the very basic stock version of the pedal. And I actually prefer this sound to using anything like a Palmer box with an amp head. I find that this actually sounds a little bit more authentic than those options. So basically what I have set up here is I'm using a bare bones rig, a guitar right into this tube drive and right into an Avid M box. And from there it's just going to go into the software. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use the amp sims in Logic just like I would a real amp head. And the guitar pedal is acting like a tube preamp. And it gives me all those glassy tones and the rich low-end growl that you would expect from a tube amp. I'm going to start out using this Vox setting on this amp here. I haven't changed anything. I've left all the dials where they are. And let's hear what it sounds like. I'm going to switch amps here. I'm going to go with a tweed style amp. This one we're going to pull up again is pretty much the stock settings, but I switched the cabinet to 12, and I think I pulled the microphone back a little bit. I often like a little bit more space when I'm doing some of these vintagey type rock sounds. Let's switch it out now. I'm going to use a Marshall type sound. I believe the idea behind this amp is kind of like a vintage plexi. I didn't touch anything on this, so the speaker right now has a condenser emulation on the speaker. I might swap this out to a 57 sometimes, or just try some different mics and positioning, but one thing that's great about this pedal is that it's very sensitive to where I'm moving my volume knob. I'm going to ride up the drive knob a little bit now on this Marshall sound. You might be wondering why you couldn't just use some of the tube-styled emulation plugins that we have inside Logic, because there are a bunch of them. My issue generally with it, for instance, like this Double Dragon and a lot of the other Stompbox emulations, even if you put them before the amp sim, they're still real buzzy and kind of blurry. There's a blurriness to them that a real tube amp doesn't have. I'm going to run you through this Effectrode Tube Drive pedal. You can check them out at www.effectrode.com. And as you can see on the left side, I've got 3 tubes in here. And the top tube is a 12AX7. And this tube is switchable. So there's a couple other options that you could put in there that will affect the gain staging. So the other tubes don't quite have as much distortion or overdrive in them. So there's a little bit more of a range between the lowest setting and the highest setting, how much grit it has. It has a volume knob, which gives a really healthy amount of gain, but not so much that you're going to turn it on and your amp's going to be screaming at you and you're going to scare all the children. The tone knob is very effective on this. It sits really in a nice place where if the amp is a little dark, I can really kind of crank it up a bit and just get the right amount of chime on there. It doesn't seem to go from being like dull to just biting your head off. And also, if I'm playing through an overly bright amp sim, a DI, a sound card, or an amp like a twin reverb, for instance, I can knock it back and just sweeten it the right amount, so it feels bigger and less shrill. 2 other adjustments that are on here is there's a bass boost switch in the back. As you can see, it switches up and down like that. This is great. It adds just a little bit more low end into your signal. It doesn't get tubby, and it doesn't lose its definition. It just fills out the sound a little bit. It's very flattering, as is the bright mellow switch that is also in the back up here. It can really add a lot of chime into your signal, and you can just kind of hear the high frequencies crunching a little bit differently than when it's on the mellow switch. So pretty much through all these 3 tone adjustments, I can deal with any amp sim or DI to kind of counter against whatever artifacts it's adding that aren't flattering.